Hello, marketing research students. This week our focus is on Chapter 13, which is all about communicating our market research findings to our audience. And you're going to be doing that in two ways. One, with a report that you submit for 150 points, and then with an oral group presentation for another 150 points. So, in addition to Chapter 13, I want to first start with the marketing research paper grading rubric and give you some guidance on that. First, and this is posted in Moodle, by the way, this is what I want to see. These elements are what I want to see in your final report. And I will, as we go through the chapter, I will give you guidance on each of these different sections, but this is what I'm looking for in the whole of your report. Make sure that you cover each section substantially. Don't forget your literature review that you did early in the semester. Put the key things that you found from your literature review in your report. That is going to go in the introduction stage, is where you'll put findings from your lit review. Also, make sure that you write in a professional tone, like you're presenting this report to a client. Use we rather than I. I know that you'll probably write parts of it individually, but make sure you write as a group, collectively, rather than as individuals. Avoid using contractions like don't, won't, doesn't. Spell out the words. Also try to avoid passive voice when at all possible. When you do cite from a source like your lit review, make sure that your citations are both in the body of your report as well as in a reference list. Pay attention to spelling, grammar, punctuation, capitalization. Make sure your spelling's correct. All of those elements are going to be important in your final grade. I want to point out just a couple of general things. It's kind of the why we are doing this. When you report your group project findings, make sure that you communicate effectively, provide interpretations that are sound and logical. Make sure that your research was done from a credible standpoint, that it's believable, and keep in mind that the document that you share and the PowerPoint that you share may be used in the future by other groups, so it's going to serve as future reference document for others. As I mentioned in the grading rubric, I'm following the book here. These are the elements that I want to see in your final report. Now I want to give you some guidance on each one of those. On your title page, I want the name of your project. You're doing it for BA 473 Market Research. Put my name on there, and then also include the name, all of the names of the people in your group. Table of contents, that's pretty self-explanatory. List of all the topics in the report with their page number, sequential order. The executive summary is very important. The executive summary may be the only thing that some people read. So as it says, it is kind of a summary of your entire report. Think of it like the abstract in a research paper. And the executive summary has several purposes: to convey how and why the research was done, summarize key findings, suggest future actions, and keep it short. Keep it to less than a page. With your executive summary, I will accept either full sentences, or you can use bullet points in your executive summary. After your executive summary comes the introduction. The introduction contains the background information. Why did you do this study? If there are any key terms that need to be defined. Your lit review should be part of your introduction. And then specific research objections, primary research questions that the study was designed to answer should all be contained in the introduction. In the research methods and procedures section, these 4 items are what you should address. Research design, and you can see there exploratory, descriptive, or causal. I would also state whether you were using quantitative, qualitative, or mixed methods research. Types of secondary data include the study. Some of you are using more secondary data than others, but if you use data that already existed as part of your study, make sure you talk about that here. If primary data were collected, how did you do it? Was it observation, survey, questionnaire, interview? And then how did you collect it? Was it via internet, email, phone, etc.? How did you choose your sample and the sampling process? And some of these questions you've already addressed because you had to do that for the IRB form. How the sample population was defined and profiled. So, how did you choose who was going to be a candidate to answer your question? Sampling units, were they individuals, households, businesses? Sampling lists, that would be just the different entities that you went to try to get people to participate. Sample size, how many actually participated, and whether it was a probability or non-probability sampling plan. Data analysis and findings. How did you analyze the data that you received from your participants? And then what were the key findings from that? Here you can address data analysis and findings in sentences, or you can use graphs, tables, charts. You can use a combination. Maybe you want to show a chart and then put a little description as to what that chart indicates. But what you found from the data you collected from your secondary and primary data should go in this section. In the conclusions and recommendations section, you've talked about all the data that you collected and the findings. Here you want to propose what can be done with that data. Now, be careful in this section. Don't say that you proved something. We're not doing the type of experiments that we're proving anything. What you found is that your data shows that this is one of the reasons why people do this, or this is why people chose to live in Huntington County, or this is, what our sample, when we sampled our population, this is why we found that they tend to spend more time practicing and doing their sport than they do their academic work. And how might that be used, in the future by institutions when they're recruiting student athletes? So think of it in those terms, but again, don't use language like prove. All your study data does is indicate a trend from that sample. It doesn't prove anything beyond that. Every study has limitations, and limitations can be things like limited financial resources, limited time, limited sample size, anything of that nature that was a weakness of the study. And every study has them, so just state those and be clear about them. In the appendix or appendices, that is if you have a lot of supplemental information. I don't envision our groups to have that, but one thing you should put in your appendix is a copy of your survey instrument or questionnaire or list of questions. And I would even put that one assignment that I had you draft a sample email to go with your survey. I would put all of that in your appendix. Please pay attention to this section, common problems in preparing the marketing report. Lack of data interpretation. What I've seen in the past with some student groups is they just report the answers that they got in their surveys, but they don't do any interpretation as to, what that means or how that could be used. So don't just give me data, give me the interpretation of the data. Unnecessarily using complex statistics. If you do a lot of statistical analysis and you need to support what you did, put that in the appendix, but try to keep it as user-friendly as possible, as simple as possible. Emphasis on packaging instead of quality. I've seen this before where groups put together a real glitzy report or presentation, but there's not much substance to it. People like me see right through that, so Pay attention to your content. I want you to present a professional looking report and a professional presentation, but I'm not going to be over impressed with a bunch of glitz and bells and whistles if there's not much in the way of content. Lack of relevance, that's where if you drift from your primary research question, please don't do that. And then placing too much emphasis on a few statistics, really, just pigeonholing in on one thing rather than the breadth of your report. Please also read the information in the text on pages 363 and 364 about oral presentations. I will also post the grading rubric for your oral presentation. I have decided that we are going to do your presentations using Zoom. We'll have each of your groups present using Zoom, and you'll be able to share your PowerPoint with the rest of the class. I'm also going to be asking your groups to sign up for a date and time when you want to present, and then I am going to invite some people to join us virtually. I know the people from SCORE, there are several people from SCORE that want to hear the presentation, and then for some of the other presentations I'm going to invite, I can't promise that they'll attend, but I'm going to invite some people from the university to sit in on those presentations if they're available. So I'm going to have your groups choose dates and times, and I'll put that in Moodle for you. Thanks a bunch.